All right. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Barbara Daly. I'm a program manager with the City of Edmonton in the environment section. In my past, I've been a project manager, program manager in a number of different industries. For this project in particular, I've had to draw on a lot of past experience and in particular, a good sense of humor. So it was really useful going through the Saskatoon one for me. There were a lot of differences and variations. I'll keep my presentations pretty brief so I don't duplicate some of the information Hillary has shared. And clearly this is a very sophisticated audience anyway, so I'll try not to torture you with the minutia. But we are on the verge of launching our program. So hopefully this will still be useful. Kevin, can you just confirm you can see my presentation, the first slide? Yeah.
Super. Yes. Yeah, all good.
Thank you. Okay. So I'll tell you a little bit about what CEIP is, and it stands for Clean Energy Improvement Program, but I'll get into that. A little bit about our program development for the City of Edmonton, some details, stacking of our rebates, roles and responsibilities, and then there's a question period right at the end. So Clean Energy Improvement Program, it's the kind of the Alberta version of PACE, and it is ours. The City of Edmonton's will be a 2-year pilot, and will help property owners with energy efficiency retrofits and low-cost financing. I see Carly Beaver on the call as well, and she's with Calgary now, but was really one of our strongest partners when she was with EEA and AMSC as well. And some of the questions, if they get into the minutiae about CEIP and its history, to put her completely on the spot, Carly, you might end up stepping in for some of these for that history outside of Edmonton's experience. So like every version of PACE, the financing is tied to the property, not to the organization. It'd be very interesting through our pilot to see what, if any, advantage that has when properties change hands. Our pilot is just 2 years. We may not find ourselves in that situation where we can test, did it improve the value, make something more saleable? But it is something that we'll look to evaluate at least in other jurisdictions. And the City of Edmonton has a number of environmental strategies. Energy transition is a key one. There's an adaptation strategy as well. And PACE was actually identified as having potential for Edmonton and for Alberta more than 10 years ago. So I've actually been attached to PACE for 10 years. So it's only taken 10 and a half years to get to this point. But there were a number of pretty serious hurdles that had to be addressed. And the government of Alberta was a useful partner. And there was a lot of cooperation amongst various Alberta municipalities to get to this point. Some highlights. So the regulation was actually passed January 1st, 2019. And that was after quite a bit of engagement. City of Edmonton, I think, was primary in leading that. City of Edmonton and Calgary, we were determined to dive in. We were looking at creating a facsimile of the program that would be legal for City of Edmonton, and the government of Alberta kind of stepped in and kind of took it over. We didn't get everything we wanted, but it's a really workable, solid program, so we're pretty happy. In December 2020, we got the announcement from FCM that we were awarded just under $10 million, and it went under the signature series, and we submitted our application as creative financing. Might roll over to the CEF program at FCM, but at the moment, this funding came out of the signature series, which has kind of a different set of rules and parameters that we're operating under. August 19th, similar to Hillary's experience, was unanimous passing of the bylaw, and it's a 2-part bylaw, one to opt into the program, and the second one is the second part of it is to allow borrowing. We're looking at a September 30th tentative program launch, and becomes more tentative with every day. Just some key agreements haven't been finalized yet. So until we have the FCM agreement signed and the master program agreement with the MSC, we won't launch, but it should be very close to that date. I'd mentioned that under the signature series, our submission for the FCM financing spoke to both residential and commercial. So we'll have both in our pilot program, which CEF is just residential. And these are some of the highlights of the residential, the definition of residential under the CEIP program. So we're kind of moving in between what the City of Edmonton wants and what the CEIP program actually allows. So the definition of residential is 1 to 4 units, and anything over 5 and up would be considered non-residential, and that would go into our commercial offering. But in the residential property, 1 to 4 units, $3,000 to $50,000. We're estimating a number of applicants at 80, and that's just because we pulled from the Toronto early experience of an average $15,000 in retrofit investment. We've made a few changes to our program that will likely drive that up. And there's that optimistic date of September 2021 again for a launch. The 80 applicants is just an approximation. What's a hard number is $1.25 million of our $11.25 million budget. $1.25 million is earmarked for residential, and that will be a sum of our financing stacked with rebates, City of Edmonton rebates. Under commercial, again, the actual program, provincial program, dictates these requirements and dictates the definition of the non-residential. We're calling it commercial, but technically it could be a condo building, 5 units or more. They can finance up to $1 million. With a minister's approval, could go beyond $1 million. We're estimating 20 applicants, but again, $10 million of our $11.25 million pilot earmarked for commercial. So we're estimating 20 $500,000 projects, but it could be 10, 1 million. And if we have any projects who want to get ministerial approval to exceed, then that number could change. So just a ballpark. And we're looking to launch that in March or April of 2022. So we'll let the dust settle on the residential launch. And because we're the only municipality in Alberta doing commercial, because we were lucky enough to get under that FCM signature series, AMSC, the administrator for the program, has focused largely on residential, and will pick up the speed on non-residential after the launch. 3 main players in this in the programs. There's the FCM, because they bring the funds, and AMSC, which is the designated administrator for the program for the province of Alberta, and then City of Edmonton. Some of the tasks are there that might be useful for other municipalities, breaking down roles and responsibilities. The AMSC as administrator was a very interesting ride. Government of Alberta had created an entity called Energy Efficiency Alberta, and actually named them in the regulation that was passed in January of 2019. And while that sounds great, or maybe doesn't sound like anything at all, it was a real problem when the election occurred in May of 2019, and a new party was organized with whom these priorities didn't perfectly align. So we did a lot of holding of our breath to see what would happen, and indeed EEA was dissolved, and that meant the regulation was in no man's land, or no person's land, and only when through ministerial order another administrator was named could we actually start working again. We never really stopped working, but it could have been all for naught. So that if there's a lesson learned there, it's maybe don't name an administrator in your regulations as they emerge. Talked about stacking rebates. When we applied to FCM for the funding, we needed to have 20% skin in the game. So the sum or the value of the City of Edmonton resources, along with what we would likely pay an administrator, was great. It was about 1.2 million, but in order to get to an $11.25 million pilot, we had to show more of an investment, and that was really easy because we still have several rebates in market. A residential solar rebate, HERA, which is residential energy efficiency retrofit rebates, and BERA, which is a commercial energy efficiency retrofit rebate. So basically, we're just earmarking funds in those programs. They are going to naturally align well with CEIP applicants, and we will, through a very tedious process, ensure that every applicant has access to the maximum amount of financial support possible between the financing eligibility and the rebates. We've adjusted the CEIP program a little bit to satisfy Edmonton, in that we made some of the requirements for eligibility tougher, because we wanted people to qualify for both the financing and the rebates, and our rebate eligibility is fairly lofty. So we're driving all the right behaviors, but we're rewarding with a combination of low cost financing and fairly generous rebates. There is a little example there too, and I should point out that we'll actually first and foremost use any rebates to reduce the financing. So if someone submitted a $20,000 retrofit project and was approved, and ultimately we're eligible for $3,000 in rebate financing, our rebate vendors would actually divert the rebate payment to the City of Edmonton, and only $17,000 of financing would go on the tax roll, not the full original 20. Here's a really simple flow diagram that kind of shows the interaction, and then here's a really fabulous one that took months and months to prepare, and we have about 15 of these that go into extreme detail of who does what and what color shirt they're wearing on the day they do it, but just in order that we can be very interchangeable with our resources and ensure that there's a consistent story and fair application and process for the CEIP program, the rebates, and getting it on the tax roll.